Is there anyone to adopt them? I will adopt them. Is there a seconder? Allison?
I can't vote. I'm not a member.
Oh, aren't you? Well,
No.
really, we and I don't know if Steph Jones is a member, but she wasn't here, so that I don't see how she can vote on something that she wasn't present for.
We can say unanimous consent.
Okay. Oh, can I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Definitely by unanimous consent.
Okay. No one's outraged by the minutes. No.
Well, there certainly were at, well, no, but that was a special meeting. Public comments. Are there any public comments?
That would be Kim's opportunity.
Would now be the time? Am I commenting on the agenda from last meeting, or is this totally brand new? This is my time to speak?
Whatever you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, the only issue I have is in regards to notifications and how whenever a large cost increase is projected and how that information gets put out to the Tunstall Bay public. I know there was efforts made, but I mean, a lot of people like myself who I kind of stay in tune and kind of don't tune in. So I'm probably halfway in the middle. So, I mean, the big cost increase was a surprise to me, and I think it was a surprise to most people. So in my mind, if there's going to be another cost increase, let's say that's over 5% of your annual fee, then efforts have to be made to inform the public. And in thinking about it, you know, almost a mail out in your mailbox seems to be perhaps the most effective. Not everybody's on Facebook. I'm on Facebook and I look at it quite regularly. And I think, you know, I did see the information regarding the water situation, but, you know, because when you look at information online, you know, you tend to do it very quickly. You glance at it and move on, glance at it and move on. But whereas with a mail out, you know, you go to your mailbox, you pull out all the flyers and whatnot. And then if you pulled out something from the water LAC, you look at it and you see in big bold letters that your costs for water are going to double, then obviously you will
you're going to be shocked.
Yeah, you're going to be shocked, and you're going to make an effort to stay in tune. But if you just see something quickly on a Facebook page, you know, it's not necessarily going to grab your attention unless it was in big bold letters that said this is going to increase your annual water costs by $1,000. So my issue is, you know, there needs to be a trigger, and I'm just arbitrarily saying 5%. And once the forecasted cost goes above 5%, then how do we effectively inform the public? You know.
So this informing the public and getting the public to read it has been an issue from day one of the municipality. I remember a public hearing where somebody said, this is the first time I've seen this. And there had been 2 mail drops to the house. And they just didn't read them. Now, there is you can sign up on the municipal website for news and notices specifically related to Tunstall Bay. And so the cost increase is, I think, largely due to the water tank, but the that information was all disseminated and people were sent notices to their emails or their contact emails.
That's if they were signed up.
If they were signed up. So we need to encourage everybody to sign up.
Yeah.
Because the
no,
cost.
I'm signed up to the Bowen Muni email, and I get probably one a day. I didn't know I could specifically target Tunstall Bay
specifically request.
So
but again,
The link for that is in the signature of my email.
Yeah.
So if you
Sorry,
ever receive an email from me, there's a link there saying sign up. You click it, it'll give you the choice of which water system.
oh, okay. But then again, when I get emails, I mean, if I'm like most people, I probably get 20 emails a day.
But the cost, Kim, of doing a mail out and the staff time to prepare it and everything, that's going to be a cost for the water system. So if you guys want us to budget for that and the extra costs, then
what we could do, and looking back on this reservoir project, I mean, going back to the budget process from last year, it was essentially a community driven project in the sense that the LAC at the time was asking for this, right? A lot of things were responding to infrastructure that's failed. This was a case of a community being more proactive. And the budget was included in 2021 was, $760,000. It's essentially the same costs were budgeted, over a year ago. And, looking back on that, like we were a bit taken aback by, the anger of some people that, or of a lot of people that, why are we paying this money? We don't want this. We don't need this. It's like, well, you asked for this and then we're doing our best to deliver it. I think what would have helped is going back a year ago, if we take that budget at the time, in this case, it turns out to be about the same as what it's costing. In some cases you have escalation, but, and expressing that as okay, assume here's what the community is asking for. It would, assuming we're going to pay for that as a 5-year loan, which is what it is in this case, that could be converted or something longer, some assumption about financing. This will be, $500 or, $700 per property, whatever it is. Then it's on the mail out for the next billing. And at least, people have gotten the best and, most, representative of the impact to them, information that we can supply. So, looking back, if we'd done that, maybe that would have helped. There probably would still be people that, you come down to it and you're in the position of advancing with the project and they haven't sort of thought it through or paid attention. It's also like that when Steph was asking about the role of the LAC, like we're operating under the assumption that the LAC represents the sort of the collective voice of the community, and there was some disconnect in this case. So that's important that if this committee is going to be useful, that has to be bridged, right?
Yeah, the point on the mail outs, I think they're quarterly for water billing in Tunstall Bay. I assume it might be the same for all the water districts on Bowen. And putting notices in the quarterly bill outs is probably a good idea, probably more cost effective than having separate mail outs when your forecasted cost goes over 5%. Is that something that's doable in terms of process?
I think in terms of like a major capital projects, yeah, that would be something we should be doing. Yeah.
I generally look at my quarterly water bills whenever I get them, but I don't always get them because I don't always owe money. I think if I don't owe money, I don't get the bill. I'm not 100% certain on that, but sometimes I know that, I haven't seen the water bill lately. And I think one time I called up and asked about it, and they said, "Oh, you're not in a payable position, so we don't send the bill out." So obviously, if there was a large capital cost project and I wasn't owing money, I might miss that notice. So even without owing money, I would still like to see my quarterly bill, regardless. And I think it's perhaps even more important now if that's the way we're going to communicate large capital expenses.
Stephanie, did you have something to add?
Sure, yeah, just two quick thoughts. Kim, I totally agree. We can improve upon our communications. Myself as well. I've had trouble keeping track of what's going on in our water area. As a new member, personally, I'll commit to posting on the Facebook group and physically stapling or whatever else to our message boards here in Tunstall Bay. I think we have at least 3 of them. So I'll staple what I can to those. I agree with you that it's a great idea to make use of the mailouts that already occur, so that if we can add in a page or whatever is the easiest way, so we don't have to change any graphic design, just stuff an extra piece of paper in there in the quarterly mailouts. I agree that that would be a great way to go. I do think at the end of the day, we're never going to get 100% of people. There's always going to be one person at every meeting that's going to say, I never saw it. So I think we all have to have that expectation that there's always going to be that one person. But I think we can definitely approve.
I'll be the one guy.
You'll be the guy. All right. I'll come to your house. I'll knock on your door. So just wanted to make that comment. So, bringing a new bit of energy to the committee, that's what I'm happy to commit to doing. And then in terms of the other comment of how this has gone over the course of the year and whether we are representative, I think in doing that communication and in hopefully getting another member on this committee, we can be a bit more representative of the different folks that we have in the 144 parcels that we have here. So I think by and large, there is a lot of support for what we're doing here. But I think at the end of the day, in terms of the financing aspects is where the support crumbles, and we need to communicate a bit more on how these cost increases are happening, why they're happening, and what's the future going to look like. So those are just my 2 comments.
Just to add on to that, I sort of knew that the water tower was going to be built just from casual conversations or whatever, the fact that the road up to the water tower is behind my house, perhaps. But I didn't know that it would double my water costs. So am I totally on side that all of a sudden we need need a new water tower to replace the one that was taken down, I don't know, 15 years ago? Yeah, it's kind of like, what? All of a sudden we need one? But when I found out that it was going to double my water costs, that was more important. So did the LAC represent my views as a homeowner? No, it didn't. But I'm more upset about the way the cost was all of a sudden, here it is, your water cost is doubling. Oh, you didn't know about that? Oh, well, sorry about that. So.
Tim, I think you need to sign up for the committee.
This is the thing. There was several meetings at various stages as this project advanced. There was the cost could have been less, in terms of taking on a longer term loan and paying it back over 10 years or 20 years, and that could still be done. It just has, the rules around financing require a referendum process, and maybe that's what we should have done. There was a desire to get this done expediently, and this was expressed from the committee. And we were in a position that you've been, essentially the message was, we want this and our community needs this, and why haven't you done it already? That was kind of the message all the way along. And so we went with we had the project tendered. We were, needing to resolve the financing. Our previous CFO made some incorrect assumptions about the rules around that financing. And so what we ended up with is a 5-year payback, short-term loan, which is the least cost overall, but, like you said, is a big hit each year for 5 years. That sort of going back we had a earlier discussion about financing that was more sort of followed and where the community was more of a part of, then maybe the decision would have been different, that we want to do a 15-year loan or whatever, and pay less per year over a longer period, right? That would have been a possible outcome.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think I'm typical in this case that the cost increase was just all of a sudden surprise. Wasn't that surprised to hear that they were going to build another water tower, but I was surprised to know that it was, going to double my water rates. And that's a process that, as you said, there was meetings and, more than one meeting. But did I always know there was a meeting? No. And, I kind of try to stay informed, but I guess I would have known there was a meeting if I had known that the cost was going to double. But, if you affect someone's pocketbook, then it gets their attention. So the fact that the cost increase was, didn't seem to be, from what I saw, it didn't seem to be notified. I think I just let the water meetings slide. But again, if I had known it was going to double my water costs, I probably would have made more of a effort to attend.
Peter, Kristen's got her hand up.
The only question that I have, and it's a different type, the amount over 5 years, can I have been asked?
Maybe we should do the budget presentation and we'll get some better feel of where the numbers are coming from. Because the meeting was to start at 11 and we're now at 11:30.
I realize that. I'm having problem with, I have at least twice now, the computer has died and I've had to start up again. So I apologize when you see me go blank. It's not that I wanted to go blank, but for some unknown reason, it's saying wait until I'm allowed to come in. So I don't know. So yes, let's continue.
So we'll move then to the next agenda item, which is the presentation.
If I'm done with public comments, then I can gracefully bow out, I assume.
Well, no, you Ross asking all these questions
here.
about the budget, Kim. So you've got to stay now. Just mute yourself and turn your screen off and watch it.
I'm actually at work, so I do have to do some work.
Okay.
So,
Well,
thanks, everybody.
okay.
Thanks, Kim.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Watch the video later.
Okay.
I'm going to phone you to make sure you do. You haven't left yet.
I know. I'm leaving though, I promise.
Okay. Kristen, you're on.
I was just looking at the agenda. Is Patrick first?
Well, maybe we should, because of connection issues, deal with the budget, and Patrick can pipe in with comments on the capital stuff as we get to it.
I'm fine to change the order of the agenda if the committee's willing to do that.
Yeah, I think Stephanie probably has a baby timing issue too.
Has Jerry Sear managed to get in yet?
Was in, and looks like he was working on audio, and now he's gone again, but I'll keep my eye on the waiting room.
Okay, then I'll move to the budget. I'm aware that there are some questions in the chat that I've seen too, so hopefully the presentation will address those questions, and if they haven't, then we'll make sure to come back to them. So I'll just take a moment to share my screen. I'll give this PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll send it to Steph so that she can post it with the meeting agenda minutes, and it will be available for the public to view too.
Sorry, do you guys mind if we, Stephanie, do you mind if we call you Stephanie?
I don't usually go by Stephanie, but we can do that for this meeting, so that's fine.
We
Yeah,
got
I
two
can be
steps and it
Stephanie.
gets confusing.
I know, I can be
It's actually
Stephanie. in this meeting.
Stephania, so it's pretty hard for people to handle.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can be Stephanie in this meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's funny. Okay, so we'll jump right into it because what is most important, I think, at this point and is on people's minds is the new Tunstall Bay water parcel tax. So we're planning to levy the parcel tax for 6 years, starting in 2022 through 2027. Now, I'm making the assumption that the money will be borrowed in the coming months, so probably in the fall. So that means that the municipality wouldn't have to make its first repayment until the following year. So that's why we get a little bit of an extra year in there, so we can collect the parcel tax to repay that loan over the 6 years instead of 5. And that means that it's a bit of a lower parcel tax for people. So I'm just trying to capitalize on that little opportunity to collect a little bit less over a longer period of time and still have the money to make all of those required repayments in the 5 years. The proposed parcel tax, there are 129 connected properties and 15 unconnected properties, so a total of 144. Proposing that the levy will be on both connected and unconnected, and the total amount needed to collect is 117,600. So with that distribution of properties, that would require a parcel tax of $853 for the connected properties. And if we establish the unconnected parcel tax rate to be 60% of the connected rate, which is the same distribution of cost in the user rate, the 60% for the unconnected rate, then that would require a parcel tax of $512 on those lots. And that would result in the required annual collection of $117,000. So the parcel tax will be repaid in annual principal repayments of $131,000 in each of 2023 through 2027. And there I have put a provision for interest in each year of the financial plan. It's being repaid over the 5 years. And as part of the communication process, there will be written notification of the new parcel tax, and that will be mailed out to all of the property owners in the service area. That's actually a requirement of the community charter that they receive written notification. Within the user rate, there is a large capital project that's planned for 2023, a PRV, that's a pressure reducing valve chamber upgrade. The estimated cost of that work is $200,000. And the user rate increase for this year is required so as not to overly deplete the reserve fund balance. And Patrick can talk a little more about that project and what that involves. So in order to ensure that we have that money available to pay for the proposed significant capital project for 2023, we are suggesting that we're recommending that we increase the user rates by 20% this year as well. So that means that the quarterly user rate for connected properties would go from $245 to $294. And the quarterly flat rate for unconnected properties would go from $150 to $180. And then we factored in 5% increases in each of the ensuing years 2 through 5. So for 2023 through 2026. We've made the same 20% in year 1, 5% in years 2 through 5 increase on all of the metered rates as well. So with both the flat rates and the metered rate portion proposed to increase by 20%, then users could expect to see their quarterly billing increase by 20%. Looking at the revenue budget here for 2022 through 2026, you'll see the user rate budget is increasing from 161,000 to 193,320. And then this is the impact of the contemplated increases from 5% in all of the outer years. So it would go from 202 annually to 234 annually. I did have a change in accounting practice in 2021. There is a billing that goes out in the February 2022, and that is that's a billing that until this time had been posted back to the prior year. But because it's January and February of the current year, this is a one-time change in accounting practice that I'm implementing. So I'm going to record that February 22 revenue in the fiscal year 2022. So we haven't underbilled. We're just not going to accrue it back to the previous fiscal year. So it's a one-time accounting change that has that impact. But for the full year, then you will have 4 quarterly billings going in there. So it's just a one-time change and it impacts the 2021 fiscal year. So February 22 billing will appear, like I said, as revenue in the fiscal year 2022. In the expense budget for 2022, we have a line item there, 55,854. That includes an allocation of utility staff, labor, and benefits. And in 2021, the actual staff expenditures were higher. We had in 2021, we finalized the collective agreement for the utility staff. And as part of negotiating that agreement, we did have some one-time non-recurring costs that I have not factored in as occurring again this year. The budget for supplies and services in Tunstall Bay, it needs to be increased. We are having significant pressures on costs around fuel and vehicle maintenance. Those things are increasing at a rate higher than our typical kind of 2% inflationary factor. So we've added additional provision in there. We've also added a provision in the maintenance line item to include hydrant maintenance. We do that once every 2 years, and we hire contractors to do extensive maintenance work on all of the hydrants across the island, and this represents the portion attributable to the hydrants in Tunstall Bay. And Tunstall relies solely on well production, so hydro costs are a significant cost in your budget. So I've increased that budget this year based on the actual costs that we experienced in 2021. And lastly, I put a provision in here for debt on the short-term loan. I am making the assumption that the funds won't actually be borrowed until probably the fall. So I'm not going to put in a provision for like the full year of interest costs. I'm just using a partial allowance there. The rest of the years in the planned budget, I've just added a provision for 2% inflationary factor. I mean, we know that inflation is a significant influence on everything right now. And I do caution that I think 2% is probably low, but at the same time, there's a lot of unknowns and things could change. So really we're focusing on the first year of the budget, and the years 2023 through 2026 are really just to communicate a trend or communicate that that we do anticipate that costs are not going to be going down in the next 5 years. For the funding sources for the 2022 capital projects, you will have $655,000 in new debt, $25,000, which is an approved planning infrastructure grant. And we plan on using about just over 75,000 of your reserve fund balance to pay for the capital project and capital projects. The planned expenses in 2022 capital are $700,000 for the new reservoir. We've already spent $60,000 in 2021 on this project, on the design and some of the early pre-construction things. And the other capital expenditures planned for Tunstall for 2022 include a $35,000 well optimization project, $7,000 and that $7,900 has been set aside to advance the asset management plan, and $2,800 is to do a review of metering options, planning for meter upgrades in each of the future 5 years. So looking at your capital projects budgeted for 2023 through 2026, you see this is where we put the significant PRV chamber upgrade project in the second year. It's coming in at a potential cost of $200,000. And the remaining years, we've just put in sort of nominal amounts that we need to ensure that are there in case we experience some equipment failures and require replacement. Looking at the Tunstall Bay fund balances and where they're going to be in the future years, we're starting right now at the end of December 2021. We had a balance of $279,000, and that's unaudited at this point, but I don't anticipate that there'll be much movement in that number. So we are recommending that 20% rate increase to ensure that need to use the reserves to fund that cost of that PRV upgrade project in the next year, to ensure that they'll be there and that we won't end up over depleting the reserves. We have these gradual rate increases in years 2023 to 2026 to ensure that those reserve funds continue to grow and that they'll be there to support your capital renewal and replacement needs. So I think that's it for my presentation. I'll leave it up in case you want me to go back to a slide. And I'm happy to take any questions, or Patrick's here to talk about some of the capital projects that we have put in the plan.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. It was really clear. I appreciated all the arrows as well too. And a number of questions. There was a few, I think, that you were copied on as well earlier this week. One question is, have we signed on the dotted line, and is it all said and done for the 5-year period for the loan?
We haven't borrowed it, so no. I don't know the answer if it could be converted to a more longer term. So okay. I'm happy to do the research to find that out. And like I said, we haven't borrowed the money, so we're not committed at this point.
Right. I think the plan that you've laid out makes perfect sense for this 5-year period, but I'm questioning the equity of doing it over a 5-year period. It's also, in my experience, best practice to borrow for the life of the asset, which I think in this case, I think we used 30 years, or it might have been 25. Mm-hmm. So I'm just questioning the equity basically of doing it over a 5-year period and unduly burdening the residents that live here right now during this 5-year period. In my view, it would be more equitable if we did match the life of the asset in terms of how we are borrowing these funds.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, and this is my understanding from the previous CFO who was involved in this process, is that the loan could be converted to longer term, but it would involve a referendum as per the community charter. So, and the life of the asset is about 50 years. So it probably would be a shorter term than that. But.
Right. Can't borrow for any longer than a 30-year term.
30 is the max. Yeah.
Right. So 30. Yeah.
I mean, we've passed a borrowing bylaw too, which I think has the 5-year repayment term. So that would be. I'm not sure if we need a referendum versus just the assent voting type of thing.
Yeah, I think either way we could do that.
So I think that would alleviate a number of the concerns of residents. So we heard from Kim earlier, we have the comments from Shayla, my own comments as well. I think as Kim said, it's not as much disagreement that we're doing this project. It's disagreement of things like doubling costs for a short period of time. And if there's any efforts that we can put in to show that we are pushing out these costs or unburdening these few years to have it be more spread out over the life of the asset, I think that is personally time well spent.
So this is just, I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are from procedural process and what some of the constraints are that we're up against. So in order, there's a statutory number of days that need to happen if there is some kind of additional assent from the community process, if we have to kind of start from square one, in which case that will run us up against the deadline to adopt the financial plan, and there won't be a parcel tax for this year. And if there's no parcel tax, then the project has to be delayed for a year. And if the project's then delayed for a year, then there's added costs just due to construction index increases. Anything to say there, Patrick?
No, fair enough. And is there not a middle ground here in that I recognize we're right up against deadline and the plan you put together makes sense for the instructions that were given prior in the fall? Is there not some sort of middle ground where we can start on this plan, but then over the course of the next 6 months to a year, refinance in a more applicable way?
So Kristen, if we're not actually borrowing the funds till the end of the year and we've got a borrowing bylaw in place, do we have to collect the parcel tax this year, or would it just mean if we tried to change it and it didn't fly, we'd be stuck with the whole thing over a 5-year payout, and so a higher parcel tax?
Well, here's an option. We go ahead with the plan. We then change the plan, and then we can amend the parcel tax when we've got the revised financing in place. But because there is an issue that if you then go to the community say, hey, we want to borrow, there's a very good possibility that the community may vote that down. And then if we've already gone ahead and committed through RFP and awarded a contract to start on the project, then that leaves us in a very difficult, the whole community in a very difficult position as to how to pay for that. So in my view, we could reconsider it, but not if we pull out what we know that we have to guarantee the funding and the financing.
Yeah, because we really need to get going with the project. We've tendered a contract, and I think we've actually awarded the contract, haven't we, Patrick?
Yeah, maybe a quick update on that. Yes, the project was tendered in the fall, contract's been awarded. The manufacturing of the tank has commenced. They're planning to start work on site in May, expecting tank delivery towards the end of June. So to get the concrete and pipe work done before then, and then commissioning in July. So that's there's no question about, it's advancing. There's no question about really delaying this would cost the community essentially.
The other advantage, I guess, of the parcel tax was, people that can defer their taxes can defer the parcel tax.
I think the issue was the length of time, Councillor Morris.
Yeah. But
I don't think anybody's too thrilled about 5 years.
Yeah, and then the deferral might be applicable for some residents who are in that position where they can't pay it at all, and that's a good option for sure. So yeah, fully appreciate that. Yeah, we're past the point of no return. If we've awarded tender, we need to move forward. So just diving into what you said, if we go forward with a referendum, do we have to be asking the question, do we borrow, or can we not be asking the question how we borrow?
That piece is, I'm going to have to confer with the corporate officer just to find out what exactly the question would be. I understand the intention is to try to lengthen the borrowing process to reduce the annual cost for people. So I think I understand what the issue is, and I'm willing to go and talk to the corporate officer later this week to see if there's some mechanism that we could lengthen it, something that we could do to do that. But given what has transpired to date, I don't think we can deviate from the plan as it is, but we can see if we can amend it for years 2, 3, 4, 5, and beyond.
I
Great.
mean,
That's a great middle road to be able to bring back to
Yeah.
neighbors here. Yeah.
and there's also a poll option, I guess, which is non-binding, but it would garner the sentiment maybe before we went too far down the piece.
I can't imagine there'd be a whole lot of pushback to say, do you want to stretch this out onto a longer time?
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for that. The second area of questions is about the chamber upgrade. And so it's both, I guess, for Patrick and Kristen. Just curious if this needs to occur next year, or if this is something that we can push out beyond this 5-year period when we have, these cost pressures from the other upgrade, or just wondering about some information about that one.
So there are this plan that Kristen presented. I mean, because we're still working on asset management plans for all of our water systems and infrastructure in general, we don't have the long-range capital replacement plan that we're working towards. We do know there are some issues. There's 3 PR pressure reducing valve chambers in the system that are old, approaching the end of their life. They will have to be replaced at some point. I've included one of those in here, and the main reason is that it's so deep, and essentially it's not safe to send anybody down there. And if anything were to happen, I'm not really sure what we would do. So it is, it might last for 10 or 15 years or more. I don't really know. It's not it's a unknown liability. It's
It's more of a placeholder at this point than a committed need happening in 2023.
Well, I've proposed that I would like to do it this year. I mean, given the issues with financing the reservoir that we're looking at, that I proposed it for next year. I guess it could be deferred. I think I'd rather not. If we can manage to address that, it's a significant risk item that we probably should deal with. The other 2 that need to be replaced don't have the same sort of safe access issues, so it's not as big of a risk. So I haven't put those in there, and those could probably be done in the 5 to 10 year time frame. There's also the water mains are going to need to be replaced at some point. Our staff were fixing water mains and leaking water mains in Tunstall Bay this past week. Those costs aren't reflected, like the capital renewal costs. So I think that even what's been shown in here is low, compared to what the capital costs are going to be for the system. We just don't have a good plan yet. So I would I recommend in 2023, I guess, getting back to your question.
Yeah, no, and fair enough. And I think that's the message that just needs to be hammered home, is that this is an unknown and significant risk, and just really relaying, the plan that you've laid out, Kristen, just sort of saying that the 20% increase is paying for this 200,000. Then we have the parcel tax, which is paying for the other project, and really just making those links together and showing why all these increases are happening at the same time. And then if we can communicate a little more, and I'm happy to help with this a bit too, is just why it's such a safety risk and why we can't send someone down there for a study. Because that's what I interpreted from what you said. It's like at the bottom of the tank and it's unsafe to go down there or something like that. Or so.
Yeah, it's a deep chamber.
Right.
And it's really unsafe to go into it.
So fair enough. So it's an unknown risk, and we're following best practice in terms of when it should be replaced, which in your opinion is next year. So that all makes a lot of sense. I think we just need to communicate. We're doing two big things at once here, which is why we're seeing increases on both sides through this extra tax and through this rate increases. Yeah, okay. I'm just looking at Shayla's question. So I think we've discussed the first one, and then the second one, I'm not actually sure which line item.
It's addressed in the,
Okay.
yeah, it's addressed in the presentation, which is the change in accounting practice, where I'm not taking that February 22 billing and moving it back and recognizing it in 2021. I'm going to recognize it in the year that we bill it on a go forward basis. So I'm not making these accruals for they're just extra work that doesn't need to be done. Let's bill what we bill and receive what we receive in 2021, in 2022, and every year going forward.
Gotcha. Okay, so I had my personal agenda items of the 5-year amortization period, and then there was this chamber upgrade. The third area that I wanted to chat about is the ongoing use of the I think we call it the capital reserve, and how we're managing it and what it's for. So, partially we're in the situation that we're in because we're debt financing for replacement at this point. What is the purpose of our capital reserve, and are we going to need debt financing again in 20 to 30 years? Are we intending to use this capital reserve to actually replace our capital, or, asset here, or what was the previous purpose of it? And because we also don't even have enough to do this 200,000 chamber valve. So just curious on our views of what we're using it for and if we should be increasing contributions to it.
So the first piece of that, I think, is the really clear direction that Patrick and I have to get that asset management plan done. I mean, it's our contingency reserve to fund major capital repairs. It's our contingency reserve to address any one-time unusual kind of catastrophic costs. Is it enough? I don't think so. I don't think very many people out there would think that it is, but how much should there be? And without that asset management plan to inform that decision, I don't think that we can tell you what that number is. So it's very much our intention to get that work done. An interesting thing that isn't in Tunstall Bay, which several other water systems have, is a dedicated transfer to their capital reserve each year. And Tunstall Bay just kind of sets rates, and whatever isn't spent in the operating ends up getting put into that reserve year after year. I don't think that that's a really good financial planning strategy to get a balance to where you want it to be in the future. A lot of other systems do have a parcel tax that's dedicated as a very deliberate transfer to their capital reserve each year. So that's, I mean, in the interim where you have this brand new parcel tax, I don't think there's not gonna be a lot of appetite for, hey, let's make it even more at this point, but it is something maybe, maybe the parcel tax will stay 5 years, maybe it'll be a little bit longer. Maybe you wanna consider keeping it when the debt is retired and using that as a dedicated transfer to that reserve fund to help build that up over time. So you won't be in this position again, because $700,000, it isn't a huge amount of expenditure, really. Like when you consider a house is more than that, you know what I mean? Like it should be, that's something that had the planning and the intention to be there and save for it. It's doable, There are other upgrades that are multi-million dollars of water main upgrades and stuff. And I think that it's probably understood that those would have to go and be financed through debt. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to fund the under $1 million kind of capital upgrades, to be in a position to do that at some point. So that's, I think, a plan that should be looked at and should be seen to be kind of the goal.
Great. So maybe this is not something that needs to be solved today, but over the course of the next 6 months to a year, it sounds like you'll have the asset management plan in place. You'll know what replacements we'll need over the next 10 years. And then we can circle back to this discussion about the capital reserve. I think the idea of keeping in either that permanent parcel tax or something else to ensure that we have an adequate capital reserve is personally, I think, maybe the way that we need to go.
I don't think we can commit to having it done, but I certainly want to make sure that we can commit to reporting progress that we've made on it.
Within the year?
At the next meeting that we.
Yeah, not the next meeting, because we meet, I'm not actually sure. Do we meet monthly or quarterly?
Oh, not monthly, no.
Twice a year.
Yeah, so we'll be able to communicate progress.
I see. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for letting me pepper you with questions. Those were the sort of three main areas. I guess what I've heard from action items is that, thank you, Kristen, for being able to look into that longer amortization period. However, we are recommending to move forward with the plan as is, recognizing that we have awarded tender and we have made commitments with this 5-year amount, and we have crossed the bridge, as we say, for where we're at right now, but that there are some middle ground options for years 2 through 5, the 2023 year and ongoing, for perhaps smoothing out those costs for additional years.
Yeah.
Is that,
stretching it.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. Peter, I've taken a lot of airtime.
And you've done it very well. I believe one thing we haven't done, and I think there's no question, Steph, I realize you're new, but I think you should become the chair. And I know that's asking a lot, but the fact of the matter is Jerry, who was the chair, has not been able to be here. And the fact of the matter is, be it Jerry or be it myself, we've served on the committee for years, and there have been other people, but as I said right at the beginning, we need new young blood members on this committee. Jerry and myself are really have done what we wanted to do, and that was to replace the tank that in 204 wasn't decommissioned, it just collapsed. That's what happened. And the fact of the matter is, we were in a situation, as we all know, around 4 years ago, that bluntly, we nearly didn't have any water. And if there's any fires on this island, the fire chief has to go to the nearest location. And I'm afraid where we've got Roger Curtis and Seeley Park right beside us, without tanks, it has been taken from our tank, and rightly so. The main thing this tank, in my opinion, has been built for, and why I have stayed on as long as I have, and Jerry has, is the thing of fire. Fire is, and I'm afraid probably the Roger Curtis area is more likely to be the place that we have a big forest fire. And this tank is, in my opinion, necessary. The amount over 5 years, I feel like you, Stephanie, it is short. There are people who would like to pay for it 100% now, that extra fee of 5 years. So it's not increased, but if that's not the case, it's just one thing that had to be done. So I honestly believe,
Give me your cell number.
hearing you talk, and you should become the chair. And I hope you can bring on new members, because it is needed, but it is only an advisory role, and it really takes only 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you, Peter. if we're talking about 2 meetings a year, then certainly I can become chair if you're comfortable with that.
Very comfortable. I second it.
Okay. All right. Sure.
Is that a vote? Can we do a vote? I'm sorry to interrupt, Kristen, but we can check this box.
The vote is up.
All in favor?
Allison, put your hand up.
Can't vote, but I'm voting.
Okay. And that makes you the vice chair.
You're the vice chair, Peter.
I will be.
All in favor of vice chair? Thank you. Sorry, Kristen.
I don't know why you're opposing.
Where we go now?
We need to,
Oh, the
we
recommendation.
need to recommend the financial plan.
I get it.
Remember that?
Yeah, I get it.
Well, Kristen, you did a very good plan, and it's nice seeing you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Peter.
It's been a long time.
Mhm.
But are you still living in the same house?
No, I live up in Belterra now.
Ah, okay.
So are we going
So
to
I
pass? the recommendation?
certainly put up my hands to approve the budget. I do say the capital budget is also, as you said, Steph, is very important. The fact of the matter, and we all must realize that it is 50 years in the ground, and really it's going to be very soon that the whole underground is going to have to be replaced. So a capital fund is very, very necessary and probably should be increased. But if we could get it from 5 years to 10 years to 20 years, it certainly would solve a lot of members' problems. So are we voting for it, or are we voting for that budget? Or I would say we should, and I will vote yes.
I just make a quick clarification that personally I vote yes for the 2022 version, with a note that we will potentially revise 2023 and onwards.
Here.
The budget is for 2023 out is projections, and I don't think in all my years, we've never had a budget for the next year when we've actually done it that has ever matched the projection.
Okay, great. Then seconded, or sorry, I'm not sure our voting protocol
You're the
here.
seconder.
Okay, so I'll do it. That the Tunstall Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to include the draft Tunstall Bay Water System 2022 to 2026 budget as presented at its April 1st meeting in the Bowen Island Municipality 5-year financial plan. Mover,
Peter.
Peter. Seconder, Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Yeah,
All in
with
favor?
a note. Yeah.
All in favor, hands up, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Now,
so
do you want a second recommendation to request that council review the amortization period for the loan, something like that?
Good point.
What is it? Sorry. Recommend that
So the committee recommends that council reconsider the length of amortization term, the amortization term.
Or
for
repayment
the-
term for the loan.
Yeah. And then we'll see what we can do to do it easily without trying to see if we have to go back. I don't know what the process is, but we'll see what options are.
Okay, committee recommending that council reconsider the length of amortization term on repayment of the loan. Can I have a mover, please?
Can you change that to just say reconsider the repayment term for the loan? Makes it simpler.
Okay.
And puts it more in layman's language.
Yes, thank you.
Sounds good.
Mover? Thank you, Stephanie. Peter? Sorry, seconder?
Peter?
All in favor? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great.
Unanimously.
That's good.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
In terms of timeline for that, if I don't know how this committee works, if you need a subcommittee, or basically Kristen, if you want to discuss in the interim, because if we're only meeting in 6 months from now, that sounds like the time that we'll actually be needing to withdraw the loan.
The loan is in place and it's going forward. If we can change it, believe me, I will be the first one to communicate to your community that, yay, we can change it. Because
Okay.
yeah, we will get that news out to certainly the LAC committee, but we will also use other means. We could use our quarterly billing notice.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
So no further business? Patrick, we jumped over you.
Yeah, Patrick's got business.
I think we've really talked about everything in the course of the budget discussion.
What about the aquifer study?
Oh, that's true. So there was and actually that I think you didn't mention that there was a $25,000 grant. It's actually 10,000, Kristen. It's not 25,000. The recommendation was that we do a similar study of the aquifer and the wells, as was done with the aquifer that supports the other West Side water systems. The Tunstall Bay Aquifer is different, is a different resource, and that was looking at getting an understanding of what the sustainable yield of the aquifer is, and how the existing wells could or should be optimized to make better use of that resource. And based on the cost of the study for the and the optimization report for the other aquifer, that was about $35,000. We have secured a $10,000 infrastructure planning grant for that, which would leave the $25,000 to be funded from the service area.
So our budget's wrong. We've got 25 in grant revenue.
Yeah, that's incorrect.
So the other thing is, in the Islands Trust budget, for work the Conservancy is going to be doing, has a line item in there for aquifer studies for the islands in Howe Sound, but I have no detail. So I don't know whether we need to.
I assume that would be a much higher level study than what would be beneficial for this service area.
Maybe the Islands Trust could, after the amount that we pay every year for them.
Okay, Peter, don't get going on that.
Survey.
I'll try and
Michael Tail
find out
here.
more information as to what they were actually intending to do. But I didn't have time when I twigged to that before the meeting. But do we need to amend the budget now, Kristen? Because we've got 25 in there for a grant and Patrick tells us it's only 10.
We could change that number to 10 and increase the utilization of reserves.
Well, yeah. So it doesn't affect the tax
Sorry
rate.
about that. We got 2 grants and I must have mixed up the water systems.
So can I just put in the resolution then as amended?
Sounds good. So the line item that says 25,000 for grants would drop to 10, and the utilization of reserves number would go up by 15 from 75,700 to 90,007. My arithmetic's right. Okay, so no change in tax rates or revenue.
So I think that was, and then there was nothing really in terms of water quality issues from the drinking water reports to the province to report. So that's it.
Okay, sounds good.
Good update. Is that a good update, Peter?
No, nothing.
I really don't. I guess Steph has to call this meeting adjourned.
No, you do. Oh, but no, yeah,
Oh,
Stephanie,
sure.
Stephanie does. Can we see the
Sure.
baby before you disappear?
I know, she's definitely a participant over here.
Yeah.
This is baby Maya.
Oh, great. She looks
Ooh,
super.
she's
Yeah. Just the grandma in us here. Yeah.
really fresh.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm definitely a new mom over here. So yeah, I'm
Been really good. But we better let you go.
Okay. Well, Peter, if you're handing it over to me right now, then sure, I'll call the meeting. I apologize. I don't have the agenda up in front of me if there's any other action items before
Oh, that's it.
Okay, so then at 12:19, we'll adjourn the meeting for the Tunstall Bay LAC.
I second
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Not at all.